I'm Alex, 22, and I deliver pizzas in Portland, mostly working the late-night shift. It's not glamorous, but it pays rent, keeps gas in my ancient Toyota, and gets me through college classes with just enough energy left over to not collapse. Most nights blur together, doorbell rings, money changes hands, maybe a grunted, "Thanks," and I'm already halfway back to the car. But that night was different. I just finished a run downtown when the next address lit up on my app. A house tucked deep into a neighborhood I'd only ever driven past, not through. The kind of place with perfectly spaced trees and driveways that curve like they're shy, where silence isn't from emptiness, but wealth. I rolled slowly up the street, nervous. The houses looked like they belonged in a movie. Stone facades, soft glowing lights, security cameras discreetly tucked under the eaves. When I stopped in front of the place, I actually double-checked the number. Big arched windows, ivy climbing one side of the house, and this almost eerie calm that made me hesitate before I got out. The pizza box felt suddenly too flimsy in my hands. I walked up the stone path and rang the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately, and there she was. She looked about 39, maybe 40, but time seemed to treat her gently, elegant in a way you don't expect late at night. Her hair was up, loose strands falling around her cheekbones. She wore what looked like an oversized cashmere sweater that hung off one shoulder in soft pants that somehow still looked expensive, barefoot, confident, no makeup, or maybe just the kind that hides itself well. Her eyes were dark brown or hazel. I couldn't tell, but they fixed on me in this still unreadable way. "You must be Alex," she said like she already knew me. I blinked. Yeah. Large pepperoni with mushrooms." She gave a small smile, stepping slightly closer instead of reaching for the box. "That's me." I held out the pizza awkwardly, waiting for the usual quick exchange, but she didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head and said softly like we were already in the middle of something, "If you're brave enough, stay." For a second, I actually forgot to breathe. I thought maybe I misheard her. But no, she was serious. Not flirty, not playful, just honest. It was like her words didn't match the moment, and yet they did. I froze completely, heart hammering in my ears. I had no script for this. I should get going. I stammered, nearly dropping the pizza as I shoved it into her hands. She didn't try to stop me. She just took it, nodded once and said, "Good night, Alex." With this impossible calm, I practically tripped over myself, walking backward to the car. Back in the driver's seat, I sat gripping the wheel, staring at the glowing porch light, wondering what in the world had just happened. The box had barely left my hand. I didn't even wait for a tip. I wasn't thinking straight. Driving home, the words she said ran on a loop in my head. "If you're brave enough, stay. Not want to come in or thank you." It was a challenge, but not in an aggressive way. It felt like she saw something in me that even I didn't see yet. Like she was offering a door I didn't know I was allowed to walk through. At home, I collapsed onto the couch, still in my delivery hoodie, shoes half kicked off, and just sat there staring at nothing. I must have replayed the encounter a dozen times. Her voice, the look in her eyes, the quiet confidence. That house. I didn't even know her name. I told myself it was nothing. That maybe she says that kind of thing to mess with people. Maybe it was just a weird moment and I'd never hear about her again. But deep down, I knew that one sentence had lodged itself in me, right under the surface, and I couldn't shake it. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, like they weren't a question, but an invitation to become someone else. I lay there that night, wide awake, eyes tracing patterns in the ceiling, and all I could think was, who was she, and what would have happened if I had stayed? It had been days since the pizza delivery. I kept checking my delivery history as if her address might give me a clue I'd missed. Some detail that would make sense of what she said that night, but it didn't. It was just another house in a part of town I didn't belong in. No last name, just Sophia on the receipt. I even Googled it. Nothing. I told myself to let it go, but I didn't. Instead, every woman I passed on my route, every parked Range Rover, every lit-up porch made my chest tighten with the hope of seeing her again. And every night, I went home disappointed, irritated with myself for caring. So, when it happened, it didn't feel real at first. It was late morning. I had a class at noon, and I'd stopped by the small park near the river for coffee. The kind of place with kids on scooters, joggers with earbuds, and the occasional guy like me loitering with caffeine, pretending not to be stuck. I just sat down on a bench under a tree when I heard someone say, "Delivery boy." I turned and there she was, Sophia. Same quiet confidence, but dressed down. Joggers, a cropped sweatshirt, sunglasses perched on her head, a small dog at her side. Leash slack, no makeup, hair tied in a messy knot. She looked softer somehow, less composed, but more vivid. Like the night at the door wasn't a one-time apparition, but a real person. And now she was in sunlight, saying my name like we were old friends. "Well, technically I'm a delivery man," I said, standing slowly. "But I'll let that slide." She laughed, the sound low and warm. "Fair. Didn't expect to see you here." I could say the same. She glanced down at the dog. "Luna drags me here every morning. She owns me completely." Then her eyes flicked back up to mine. "You doing okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. Just, still wondering if I should have stayed." She smiled at that. Not smug, just knowing. "I didn't mean to rattle you," she said, sitting beside me like it was the most natural thing. "It's just I don't meet many people I actually feel like talking to." "You knew my name," I said. "I read it off the receipt, but I also guessed you look like an Alex." We sat in silence for a moment, the wind moving the leaves above us gently. I sipped my coffee, mostly to keep my hands busy. "I'm not usually that forward," she said eventually, "but I've been rebuilding my life. Got divorced last year. This house, this neighborhood, this new rhythm. I'm still figuring it out." I looked at her. It didn't feel like a come on, more like a test. She gave me the sidelong glance, amused. "Was it?" I shrugged. "Maybe. But I failed it apparently." "You walked away. That doesn't sound like failure to me. Just restraint or fear." She looked down at her hands clasped lightly in her lap. "That too." We talked more. Nothing scripted. Just easy, real conversation. I told her I was in school, still unsure what I actually wanted from life. I told her about the night I dropped off that pizza and couldn't sleep after. How I felt like something cracked open that I didn't know how to close again. "You're restless," she said. I nodded. "Yeah, I want things to matter, not just the next shift or the next test day at that never goes away," she said. "The hunger for something bigger, even when you're older and have all the things you thought you wanted." The honesty in her voice hit hard. It wasn't pity. It wasn't lecturing. Just this quiet alignment of two people trying to figure out how to live. Luna sniffed my shoe and then curled up at Sophia's feet. She reached into her bag, pulled out a pen, and took my wrist gently, cool fingers steady on my skin. I watched as she wrote a number in small, neat handwriting. Her phone number. "Your move," she said. Then she stood, smiled at me like we were in on a secret, and walked away, the leash going slack again as Luna trotted beside her. I sat there long after they disappeared down the path, looking at the number, feeling the warmth of her touch still on my skin. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next, but I knew I couldn't pretend it didn't happen. It felt like someone had just opened a door inside me, and now I had to decide whether to walk through it. I stared at that number on my wrist for days. It faded a little every time I washed my hands, and I refused to scrub it off. I thought about taking a photo, but that felt too much like admitting I was scared it might disappear. I kept telling myself to just go, "Oh, just text something." But every time I picked up my phone, I froze. It wasn't about fear of rejection. It was something else. Like once I stepped forward and I'd be crossing into a version of my life I couldn't go back from. Sophia didn't feel like a fling or a curiosity. She felt like a shift. On the third night, I finally gave in. I sat on the edge of my bed, took a breath, and typed, "Hi, it's Alex. I think I'm brave enough now." The typing bubble appeared almost immediately, then stopped, then came back. "Took you long enough. Tomorrow 7. I'll pick the place." She sent an address a minute later. A small Italian restaurant tucked into a quiet side street near the river. I'd never even heard of it. I stared at the screen for a full minute before typing back. I'll be there. The next evening, I showed up early. I almost didn't recognize the place. It had no glowing signs or sidewalk banners. Just a heavy green door and ivy crawling across the front. Inside, it was warm and dimly lit with shelves of dusty wine bottles and flickering candles on every table. A place for people who didn't need to be seen, only understood. Sophia was already there, seated in the corner. She wore a dark blue blouse and a silver necklace that caught the candle light when she moved. She looked at me and smiled, the kind that felt like a welcome rather than a greeting. I ordered the house red, she said. Hope that's okay. It is, I said, sitting across from her, still a little breathless. She raised her glass. To bold moves, I raised mine to meet hers to late ones. The wine was smooth and heavy, warming me from the inside. We talked, and it wasn't small talk. She asked questions that caught me off guard. Not about what I did, but how I felt doing it, about what I feared, what I wanted. At one point, I asked her, "Do you always talk like this with people?" She smiled at her glass. "No, but I don't have time for surface conversations anymore. Life's too short for pretending I don't care." She told me more about her past, the divorce, yes, but also how she used to play cello in college before abandoning it for law school. How she'd spent most of her 30s performing competence while quietly unraveling. How she bought the house for peace, but it still felt too big sometimes. "People think money solves everything," she said, running a finger along the rim of her glass. "But it doesn't fix emptiness. It just makes it quieter." I found myself leaning in, not to flirt, but to listen. "I think I've spent a lot of time surviving," I admitted. "Now I want to live, but I have no idea what that even means." Her eyes found mine again. Oh, and now again, there was something steady in the way she looked at people, like she wasn't waiting to speak, just taking you in. "You're not the only one who feels that," she said. "We're all trying to figure out how to stop just getting through the day." The food came. Handmade pasta with fresh herbs, something I couldn't pronounce. And we kept talking between bites. There was laughter, too. Not the kind that fills space, but the kind that comes when you feel safe enough to let go. When the check came, she reached for it automatically. I stopped her. "I got this," I said, more nervous than I should have been. She raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "Let me," I said. And it wasn't about money. It was about wanting to show up. She didn't fight me on it, just smiled like she knew why it mattered to me. Outside, the air had that early spring chill. She stood beside me on the sidewalk, hands in her pockets. "Ta," she said. "I make a pretty decent cup," I swallowed. "At your place? If you're still brave," she said softly. And there it was again, that invitation. But this time, I didn't feel like a boy knocking on a door that wasn't meant for me. I felt like someone being let in. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm ready." We walked to her car and I climbed in beside her. Something in me knew this wasn't a detour. It was a crossing point. Her apartment was nothing like I imagined. It was in one of those older buildings with creaky stairs and vines climbing the brick exterior, tucked away behind rows of sleek condos. She unlocked the door and pushed it open like she wasn't trying to impress me, just letting me into her world. However it was. Warm light spilled from a standing lamp in the corner. The place smelled faintly of citrus and something herbal, maybe sage. Books lined 2 tall shelves on either side of the window. A record player sat idle on a low wooden console. There was music in the air, but not from speakers. It was the kind of place that remembered music. Everything felt soft, worn, lived in. No sharp edges, just calm. "Make yourself at home," she said, kicking off her shoes. "I'll put the kettle on." I stood awkwardly near the doorway for a second, unsure if I should sit or hover. Eventually, I lowered myself onto the couch. It was deep and comfortable, the kind you sink into. A gray throw blanket was draped over the back. A half-read book face down on the cushion beside me. From the kitchen, I heard the sound of water running and cupboard doors closing. Sophia came back a minute later, 2 mugs in her hands, steam curling from both. "Chamomile," she said, handing me one. "I'm too old for caffeine at night." I took the mug. Our fingers brushed for a second, brief but unmissable. She curled up on the far side of the couch, tucking one leg under her, holding her tea in both hands. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It felt like a prize, like the room had taken a breath with us. "You live here alone?" I asked gently. She nodded. "Since the split, I wanted quiet." "I get it. You ever get tired of it?" "Sometimes. But I also spent a long time living for other people. Quiet doesn't scare me the way it used to." She looked at me over her mug like she was weighing something. "Do you ever admit what you want?" she asked. I blinked. "You mean in general?" She nodded. "Most people don't. They hint or wait to be asked. They say what they think is allowed." I thought about it. I think about it all the time, but saying it out loud, that's harder. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then she said it again. "If you're brave enough, stay." The way she said it this time was different. Not a challenge, not even a dare, just an offering. A door that didn't push or pull, only open. I set my mug down on the table slowly. Her eyes didn't move from mine. I leaned in and she didn't back away. When our lips met, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't clumsy or wild. It was steady, sure, the kind of kiss where you both already know you want it. It's just about finally saying yes. Her hand came to my cheek, soft and deliberate. I didn't know how long we stayed like that. There was no clock in that room, only the pulse between us. We didn't rush. We moved slowly, like unwrapping something precious. There were no words after that, just gestures. Her fingers tracing my jaw. The way she pressed her forehead to mine before anything else happened. How she paused at every turn, checking me, making sure I was still with her. And I was completely when she led me to the bedroom. It wasn't about passion. It was about presence. We undressed each other, not to expose, but to understand the way her skin felt beneath my hands. The way her breath changed when I kissed her collarbone. The quiet gasp she didn't hide. The way the silence spoke louder than anything else. There was no rush, no noise, no need to perform. Just two people trying to meet in the middle of the lives they'd both been carrying. Every motion felt like a sentence we didn't have to say. Afterward, we lay tangled under the sheets, her fingers lightly tracing circles on my arm. The street light outside painted soft shadows on the wall. "You okay?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "More than okay." She kissed my shoulder and closed her eyes. I didn't sleep for a while. I just listened to the rhythm of her breathing, the occasional creak of the old radiator and the soft whistle of wind against the windows. It felt fragile, like I was holding something I didn't want to drop. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. She was already in the kitchen wrapped in a robe, 2 mugs on the counter. She slid one toward me with a smile, hair messy, eyes still a little sleepy. "Morning," she said. "Still brave." I nodded, my voice catching in my throat. "Yeah," I said, "more than ever." When I left her place that morning, I felt lighter than I'd felt in months. The streets were still damp from an early drizzle, and everything looked just a little more vivid, like the world had turned up the contrast. The coffee Sophia handed me still warm in my hand, and my hoodie smelled faintly like her laundry detergent. I walked to my car slowly, as if moving too fast might undo whatever had just happened. I sent her a text the moment I got home. "Still thinking about last night. Thank you." Then another a few minutes later. "Hope you're having a quiet morning. Let me know when you're free." I waited. No response. I figured maybe she was busy. That made sense. She seemed like someone who kept a full life even in the quiet. By that evening, when there was still no reply, I sent one more. Did I say something wrong? Then I stopped. I told myself not to spiral, not to overthink. But the silence, it echoed. Not loud, but steady, like background noise I couldn't turn off. The next morning, I woke up and checked my phone first thing. Nothing. By the third day, I was pacing my apartment between deliveries, refreshing messages, reading old ones, replaying everything from that night. Did I miss something? Did I say too much or too little? She looked at me like she meant every second, and I wasn't imagining that. Couldn't have been. I started writing out a longer message, something honest but not too much. Something that would maybe break the tension without making me sound desperate. But I kept deleting it. Instead, I did something I hadn't planned. I drove to her apartment. I don't know what I expected. Maybe to see her through the window or hear music through the door or at least feel her presence in some way. But the building looked quiet. Her windows were dark. I waited on the sidewalk for a few minutes, pretending to scroll my phone like I was just killing time. Eventually, I walked up to her door. I didn't knock. I just pulled a scrap of paper from my pocket, the back of an old receipt, and wrote, "I don't know what happened, but I'm here if you need me. You don't have to say anything. Just please don't disappear." I folded it once, slid it gently under her door, and stood there for another second. Then I walked away. Back in the car, I sat with both hands on the wheel, forehead resting against the top of it. My heart felt weirdly hollow, like something had been taken out, and I hadn't noticed until now. I didn't cry. I wasn't even sure what I felt exactly, but it settled into my chest and stayed there. The next day, I didn't text or the next. And when I finally looked at her contact again, the number she wrote on my wrist was still saved in my phone. But now it felt like a ghost. A quiet part of me kept hoping, but a louder part of me began to hurt. I told one of my coworkers almost offhand, and he laughed. "Dude, she ghosted you," he said. "Welcome to adulthood." I smiled like it didn't bother me, but it did. It wasn't just the silence. It was that something had happened. And then just like that, it hadn't. I started pulling double shifts, volunteered for late-night deliveries again. Let the routine swallow me whole. But every time I passed that park or saw a woman with a small dong or heard a cello in the background of a song, something tugged at me. I could still feel her hand on my cheek. The way she said my name like she was letting it land somewhere inside her. It didn't feel like a mistake. Felt like something real. And real things aren't supposed to vanish like smoke. One night, maybe a week later, I stood outside her building again. I didn't go up this time. I just stood across the street staring at those same dark windows, wondering what was happening behind them or if she was even still there. The wind picked up and I stuffed my hands into my hoodie. I wanted to call out her name just once, not loud, just enough for the night to carry it, but I didn't. I turned, walked back to the car, and drove off. The city felt a little bigger that night and I felt a little smaller inside it. A week turned into 2, then a month. Each day chipped a little more off the edge of what I remembered. I stopped standing outside her building, stopped checking her profile photo on my phone like it might suddenly light up with a message. Eventually, I even stopped saying her name out loud. Not out of anger, but something quieter, a kind of resignation. But forgetting someone doesn't happen all at once. It's not a decision. It's more like weathering, like standing outside in the rain and slowly realizing you're soaked. It was a regular day when I found out. I just dropped off a delivery in a neighborhood not far from hers. I was driving back, not even thinking about stopping by again. I'd let go of that habit, but then I saw a moving truck outside her building. A couple of guys were loading furniture into the back. Chairs, lamps, what looked like the same coffee table she slid my mug across that morning after our night together. I pulled over, sat with the engine running for a minute, heart pounding in my chest like I was about to do something illegal. I finally got out and crossed the street. "Hey," I said to one of the movers. "This stuff coming out of 3B? He nodded. "Yeah." Lady said to leave the keys with the landlord. "Lady?" I asked too casually. He shrugged. Tall brown hair. Didn't say much. Paid in advance. "She around?" "Nah." Said she was already gone. Just left instructions. I stepped back, watching as they loaded the last few things into the truck. Gone. Not just quiet. Not just ignoring me. Gone. The word hit me like a door slamming in a hallway. I walked back to the car, gripping the steering wheel with both hands. Not starting it yet. I didn't even feel sad. Right away, I felt stunned, like I'd walked into a room expecting furniture and found empty floors instead. I didn't text her. What would I say? I didn't tell my friends. I already knew what they'd say. Told you not to fall for that. Dude, she was just lonely. You were just a story to her. Maybe they were right. But even if I was just a story, it didn't make it any less real to me. I kept driving past the places we'd been like I was chasing some kind of proof. The park bench where she teased me. The Italian restaurant with the wine that made me talk more than I meant to. The bookstore on Hawthorne I mentioned to her in passing and later imagined to her walking into looking for me. I even kept an eye out for that ridiculous little dog of hers, Luna. Somehow I figured if I saw the dog, I'd feel better. Like part of her still existed somewhere nearby. But no, she was gone in the cleanest, sharpest way a person can disappear. And yet, she still lived in me. It was in how I looked at the tea I now, in how I lingered in moments I used to rush through, in the way I sometimes check my phone. Not hoping anymore, but still checking. One night, I pulled out the hoodie I wore the last morning I saw her. The smell was long gone, but I held it anyway. Not for comfort, just for memory. The note I left under her door, I never got it back. Not even torn in half, not even scribbled on. Just silence as if it had been swallowed. I started dreaming about her, not in vivid scenes, but in fragments. A glimpse of her eyes, the sound of her laugh, the exact weight of her head resting on my shoulder. I'd wake up feeling like I'd been somewhere important, but couldn't explain why. My friends kept joking about me being ghosted, but what happened with Sophia didn't feel like a game or a flirty retreat. It felt like a chapter one wasn't allowed to finish. Maybe I should have known. Maybe the age gap mattered more than I let on. Maybe she only needed someone to remind her she still could feel something. And once she did, that was enough. But still, that night, our night, it was real. It was the kind of real you don't get often. The kind that stays even when the person doesn't. Sometimes before bed, I'd find myself whispering one word, please, like maybe the air would carry it to wherever she went. It never answered back. Grief doesn't always come in waves. Sometimes it drips quietly, predictably, like a faucet you never quite fix. That's how it started for me. Not as a flood, but as a slow leak. Every morning, I woke up expecting it to feel different. And every morning it didn't. Sophia was gone and nothing around me changed to match the weight of that. So I stopped waiting for it to change. I started changing instead. I picked up more shifts, signed up for early classes I used to avoid. Told myself the more tired I stayed, the less space I'd have for whatever was hollowing me out. It worked in a way. I became efficient, reliable, quiet. Routine became my shield. Wake up, coffee, school, deliveries, sleep, repeat. I didn't delete her number. I didn't block it either. It just sat there in my contacts, like an old photograph I wasn't ready to throw away. I never called, but I still knew exactly where her name was in my list just in case. Some nights I found myself walking, not toward anything, just moving. The city at night became my thinking space. I'd walk past couples holding hands, people laughing on patios, street lights humming above empty intersections, and none of it hurt. It just was. One night, I passed the park, the bench where we sat, where she called me delivery boy, where everything still felt new. I stopped, sat down. The air was colder than I remembered, and the trees above had started to go bare. The seasons were shifting, even if I hadn't noticed it from inside my routine. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a napkin from the cafe nearby. Wrote something with the pen I kept clipped to my backpack. Be brave anyway. I folded it and slid it between the slats of the bench. Not for her, for me. It didn't fix anything, but it felt like claiming something again. From that point on, I let myself create new habits. Quiet ones, not distractions. Just gentle anchors. Every Thursday I started going to that same cafe. Always chamomile tea, no music, just me in a notebook. Sometimes I wrote, sometimes I just stared out the window. But it became a space where I didn't need to be okay, just honest. I stopped looking for closure. I started learning how to live with absence. That was the harder part. Not the sadness, but the silence, the unanswered questions, the way people vanish from your life without warning, like a radio cutting to static mid-ong. Some nights I still imagine seeing her again. Not dramatically, just maybe at the market or turning a corner downtown. I wonder what I'd say or if I'd say anything at all. Maybe we'd lock eyes for a second and that would be enough. A silent nod, proof we both lived it. But I don't chase the thought. I let it pass. My friends noticed the change eventually. Not all at once, just in small ways. You're quieter lately, one of them said during a group hangout. I guess I replied, just thinking more. They didn't ask what about, and I didn't offer because what happened with Sophia didn't belong in loud conversations. It lived in the soft spaces between songs, in the bottom of teacups, on walks where nothing really happened. I never tried to explain it, not because I was ashamed, but because it wasn't theirs to carry. It was mine. I didn't fall in love with her the way you fall into a crush. I felt like stepping across a threshold, fully aware, a little scared, but never blind. And when she disappeared, she didn't just leave the room. She left something behind, a kind of lens. Couldn't take off. One that made me see the world a little slower, a little more sharply, a little more aware of the things people never say out loud. Maybe that was the gift. Maybe healing isn't about forgetting. Maybe it's about learning how to hold what happened without letting it break you. By the time spring returned, I had stopped counting the days since I last saw her. The city thawed around me. Trees bloomed slowly. Mornings came earlier and the air didn't bite the same way anymore. I traded my thick hoodie for lighter layers. The sun lasted longer and I noticed the shift. Not just in the sky but in myself. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for a message, not for a knock, not even for a reason. Some losses don't get explained. They just stay with you in a different shape. Sophia was one of those. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in my small apartment, and the mug she gave me, the one I sipped chamomile from after that first night, slid from the back of the cabinet. I hadn't used it in weeks. I set it on the counter and just looked at it for a while. Then I made tea, not to feel close to her, not even to remember, but because something about it still felt like home. That night I went for a walk. The park was alive again. Kids chasing each other in circles, dogs yanking at leashes, someone strumming a guitar on a blanket near the trees. I sat on the same bench as before. The napkin I had left weeks earlier was gone. Probably blown away or picked up by maintenance, but I didn't need it to still believe in what I'd written. Be brave anyway. The phrase stuck with me. I thought of her when I said it, sure, but more than that, I thought of who I became after her. Not because she changed me, but because what we shared cracked something open. She reminded me that feeling something deeply isn't a weakness. That wanting more from life isn't a flaw. That it's okay to want to be seen and to let someone see you even when it's temporary. People say things happen for a reason. I don't know if I believe that, but I do believe in moments that leave marks. And Sophia was a mark. Not a scar, not a wound, just a presence I carry even now. She was a season in my life, not meant to last, but never meant to be forgotten either. Sometimes I remember the way she looked at me that first night, standing in the doorway with that quiet confidence. If you're brave enough, stay. It wasn't just about staying in that moment. It was about staying in your own life, choosing to show up even when the outcome is uncertain, choosing to feel instead of numb. There were moments with her eyes still revisit the feel of her fingertips on my wrist when she wrote her number, the softness in her voice when she said my name, the heat between us, not just physical, but the quiet intimacy of being known. Her absence taught me something presence never could. How to carry someone without chasing them. How to let go without erasing what mattered. She left, but she also left something behind. Not closure, not bitterness, but this steady, flickering flame that lives quietly in the center of me. Courage. I still don't know why she left the way she did. Maybe I never will. Maybe it had nothing to do with me. Or maybe it had everything to do with timing, fear, or her own version of self-preservation. I've stopped trying to solve it because not every story has an ending. Some just change form. I've dated since then, slowly, carefully. No one quite like her, but that's not the point. I'm not trying to replace her. I'm just trying to keep showing up, to keep living like someone who knows what it's like to be seen, even for a moment. One night, standing at my window with the city buzzing quietly outside, I found myself whispering her name just once. Not to summon her, but to thank her. Sophia, wherever she went, whatever she needed, I hope she found it because I found something too. Not her, but myself. The story of Alex and Sophia is a hauntingly beautiful reflection, and on the courage it takes to embrace fleeting moments of connection and the resilience needed to heal from their absence. Alex, a 22-year-old pizza delivery driver, is drawn into Sophia's world. A poised woman in her late 30s whose quiet invitation, "If you're brave enough, stay," sparks a night of profound intimacy. Their shared vulnerability, from candle-lit dinners to whispered confessions, reveals a truth. Life's deepest connections often arise unexpectedly, demanding we risk our hearts despite uncertainty. Sophia's sudden departure, leaving only silence in a moving truck, teaches Alex and us that love's value isn't diminished by its brevity. Her absence forces him to confront the pain of unanswered questions. Yet, it also ignites a spark of self-discovery. Alex learns to carry the mark of their connection, not as a wound, but as a reminder to live bravely, to seek meaning beyond routine, and to honor the moments that make us feel truly seen. This story resonates with anyone who's felt the ache of a love that fades without explanation, urging us to embrace vulnerability and find strength in letting go. It's a call to live fully in the present, to cherish the people who awaken us, and to keep moving forward even when the path feels uncertain. If Alex and Sophia's story stirred your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a fleeting connection that changed you? Hit the like button if their journey moved you, and subscribe for more stories that capture the raw beauty of human experience. Join our community to keep these narratives alive. Let's celebrate the courage to love and live boldly.